A very prominent player on the Arizona Wildcats basketball team declares for the draft, but not all is lost.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Check it out, FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, we got a lot to get to this show. We're going to talk KJ Lewis. We're going to talk about Caleb Love. We're going to also talk about Trey Townsend. But let's start with KJ Lewis. All right, now, KJ Lewis is a very interesting player because he was a total miseval by the recruiting gurus. You watch KJ Lewis for 5 seconds and you know that there are not 20 better or 89 or whatever it was, 81 or 89 better players in all of high school basketball when it comes to NBA prospects. There just aren't. And he obviously was rated incredibly low. That was a mishap. But he comes to Arizona and he looks the part. He's 6'4". He's incredibly well put together. He's very, very athletic. I mean, how many times would he have a block or a steal or something where you're like, whoa? He is just a next level type. He's a next level type athlete. He's really put together. He also has a real nose for the basketball. And I think that he's got some real lockdown defensive prowess. He is that kind of guy, and I think that he is going to be a player that we can look at and say, you know, that's the type of dude you win with in the Big 12, and that's always what I was thinking about this past year is, you know, what would he look like in the Big 12? And I think that he would look very, very nice in the Big 12. So there's obviously that. I also believe too that he is going to be a pretty decent 3-point shooter. Now I know a lot of people look at his percentages and they're like, nope, he's a lost cause. He can't be a good he can't be a good shooter. I say poppycock. I believe that he will be able. There was a play against UCLA too, where he brought the ball up the court and he kind of did a little bit of a hesitation in a pull-up three, and it was like, whoa. I think that was a little bit of a precursor to next year, and I think that's something that we should all be very, very excited about, that possibility. So there's clearly that. He is also a player that, is just really, really good for team morale. He's just good to have on a team. Guys like KJ Lewis are good to have on a team. And there's just, like I said, he's kind of a jack of all trades to a certain degree. And he came in and he was cool playing that 12 to 15 minute per game role. So there's that. But I do believe next year that he would be somewhere in the 15 points, 6 rebounds, probably 5 rebounds, 3 assists, something like that, while playing lockdown defense. And you have to remember that he would be a very, very welcome player in the Big 12, because the Big 12 is going to have a lot of really, really good players in it that are physical. I mean, watch Houston for 5 minutes and just know that that is the type of player that KJ Lewis is going to look like. And those are the kind of guys that Kelvin Sampson basically rolls out. And there looks like there's about 25 of them on the roster. They're all good. So Arizona very, very much would like to have him back. Now, he's going to test the NBA waters. What does this mean? I am not a fan of this. Now, he's likely back, so we need to start with that preface. But I am still not a fan of players that are probable NBA first, or that are NBA players eventually going and testing the NBA waters, because that generally means, not all the time, but if they're already an NBA prospect, it just takes one team to tell them that we will draft you in the first round, and then there is that. So hopefully that does not happen. We would very much like that not to happen, because, again, I like him a lot as a player. I think that he can be a really, really good player for the University of Arizona. And I believe that he would be a lottery pick. I think it makes a lot of sense for him to come back for another year. I think if he comes back for another year, then you start looking at a player that you're like, all right, probably a top 15 pick because he can work on his handles. He can work on his shot. He can just work on a lot of different things that are, that can certainly help him that certainly helps him at the next level. So we will find that one out. That will be, that's going to be interesting, but I don't like it though. This isn't the day like back in the day where you went there and it just takes a player. Keep in mind, Dalen Terry went in there, and by all accounts, most people thought he was going to come back. The dude averaged 8 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 or 3 assists per game, and he was drafted 18th by the Bulls because of his potential. You got to remember, I get people all the time that'll be like, well, so-and-so isn't ready for the NBA, and you're probably right. But it doesn't matter if you're ready for the NBA. It matters on where they are going to draft you. It matters on your potential. And that's really what they go with, because there are a lot of guys that are physically maxed that are ready for the NBA, but they're not really NBA prospects because NBA GMs, NBA coaches, they see a player that is pretty much maxed out and won't get much better. So it's generally about the process, or it's generally about the upward mobility that this player likely has. Now, there are some things going for Dalen Terry that KJ Lewis didn't have. First of all, Dalen Terry was 6'7" or 6'8", and he was a really, really good passer. And he was a pretty highly rated kid coming out of high school. He was a top 35 player, whereas KJ was obviously in around 90. But NBA folks, I don't think, really care about that much, nor should they care where a player was slotted out of high school, because NBA coaches' jobs are to find out which players are, which players are the ones that can really help them the most. But again, I know I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but I still worry a little bit about it because KJ Lewis is clearly an NBA player at some level, and that is something that, I'm not exactly thrilled about. So we will find that out. Plus, he's a really good kid. He's a hard worker, so it's easy to see him and say, all right, 2 years down the road, we could have somebody, or 2 or 3 years down the road, we could have somebody who's going to be a player. I mean, look at Dalen Terry right now, and Terry started to get minutes at the end of the season. So, and I would imagine next year he's probably going to get even more minutes. But we'll obviously keep you in the loop on that. But he's likely back, so obviously don't want to start a panic storm. But he would be a massive loss for Arizona if Arizona was to lose KJ Lewis. That would certainly not be good for Arizona. And I think that Wildcat fans would not be happy with that. So, like I said, we'll keep you up to date, but all signs are that he's back. And he also had a very, very good, there was something that I liked very, very much the other day where he was talking about when Trey Townsend, who we're going to get to again, committed to the University of Arizona. He said, let's get it, or something like that. So it certainly feels like somebody that is probably coming back to the U of A. But in this day and age, when you got millions of dollars being thrown at a kid, you never really know until it's done. So, but he is the difference between, I think, being a top 5 to 10 team and being more like a top 15 to 20 team. And again, his physicality, I think, is going to be greatly needed in the Big 12. So Arizona, I believe, does need to address that. Now, we're going to talk about some of the perimeter, but first, Monopoly Go. Download Monopoly Go today, free on the App Store and Google Play. Check out Monopoly Go. All right, everybody grew up playing Monopoly at some point. It's a great family event, and again, it is enjoyable. It's maddeningly enjoyable is probably the best way that I could put it. Everybody likes Monopoly Go. or a Monopoly, and now it has become virtual. That is the best thing about it. It is virtual and it is fun. You can play it. You can play it across the country. You don't have to be, confined into this tight little cocoon to play it. You're able to actually go ahead and just play Monopoly Go. So again, check it out. Download Monopoly Go free on the App Store and Google Play. And Gametime, my friends, Gametime. Now, let's say that you're looking to go into an Arizona basketball game this coming year, and you're looking to go into an Arizona basketball game this year, and you're like, all right, let's, I don't know how to do this. And you're like, so, why, how would I get there? Gametime, my friends, but Gametime is not just for tickets. Gametime is for all kinds of different things, from let's see here, concerts to sporting events, you name it, Gametime has it. So again, check it out, Gametime. This is another one of those ones you will thank me later on. Gametime is where it's at. I know a lot of people that have gotten last minute bowl game tickets, or last minute, you name it, Gametime has it. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Again, Gametime, check it out. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk about Caleb Love, Joson, Sanon, and how this all works. Now, it's going to be pretty unlikely that Caleb Love and Joson Sanon are on Arizona next year. I think it's going to be one or the other. So, Caleb Love, he is obviously going through the draft process. Other teams are going to probably try to get him to go there, but I would be stunned if that actually happens. I believe he will either be in the NBA or he will be coming back to the University of Arizona. It's one of the two. So, but Joson Sanon will probably not hit campus if this is the case. So what does this really mean for Arizona? We are going to explore all of those possibilities. But the big thing is with Caleb Love is he's the dude who can, like I said, he was a top 10 player last year. If it comes down to Caleb Love or Joson Sanon, you are taking Caleb Love every single day of the week, because with freshmen, you don't really know. We've seen this before. Freshmen that, unless you're somebody that is a top 2 to 3 player, you don't really know exactly how they're going to pan out. And that is something that generally as a coach, you don't want to totally bank on. And that makes total sense, because you're also kind of at the stage where, I know what I got, and the devil I know is better than the devil that I don't know. So you take Caleb Love. But if Caleb Love were to stay in the NBA draft or decide, you know what, I'm going to go professional, Joson Sanon is a very, very nice backup option, for lack of a better term, in that he's a volume scorer. He's looking to get his. You watch his games, and he can get to the bucket. He can make threes. He can get the mid-range. He looks like a lottery pick eventually. He looks like somebody that will hear his name called in the early part of an NBA draft. So we will find out what happens there. But I will say that I would be pretty surprised if both of these guys are on the same team. As an Arizona fan, you'd love it. I'd love for, pardon the pun, for Joson Sanon to be able to come back next year and to be able, Joson Sanon to be able to be, that first guy off the bench next year. But I also understand that his camp wasn't really sold on that, and the U of A totally gets that as well, because you got to remember that the U of A didn't really envision Caleb Love as being a possibility of coming back until this all occurred. So it'll be one or the other, but there's also a good chance that Joson Sanon will reclassify, and if that's the case, to the 2025 class. That could certainly be an option. So even if Joson Sanon does not arrive at the University of Arizona, you should be in the he could still very much end up on campus. And I think that's something that is really, really big for the U of A. And I think that's something that every Arizona fan should be excited about. Again, it's certainly not a done deal by any means, but I'd be very surprised if they're both on the same roster next year. And I think there's a very good chance that Joson Sanon can reclassify. Now, Trey Townsend. We need to talk about Trey Townsend here. He is a I think just a big time get for the U of A. We obviously talked about this last show. I think what a big part of what Trey Townsend can do is big part about what Trey Townsend can do is he can pass the ball. And not only can he pass the ball, he can make plays. And that's a big part of what he can do. We talked about that yesterday. He's had games where he's got 4 assists, 6 assists, 5 assists. He's a very good passer. And in Tommy Lloyd's offense, that is a big thing, is to have somebody who is not only a good passer, but a willing passer. And he is certainly both. That's something to be excited about if you're a University of Arizona fan. And I think it's probably something that excites Tommy Lloyd too, because you need dudes like that. Those guys are just good for teams. Not only are they good for teams, but they also make other players' jobs easier. So here's what you're getting. You're getting a guy that's going to be able to get a lot of rebounds for you. He's going to be able to get his own basket, which is something that I think that's very, very important, which is very, very important. And he's also going to be able to get into the make the easy pass, get the hockey assist. He's offensively. Now listen, defensively, he's certainly not what Keyshawn Johnson was, but offensively, he's a much better player than Keyshawn, just pretty much across the board. He can just do a lot of things that Keyshawn Johnson can't do. And I don't care how many shots Keyshawn was having to take. There's no way that his team is beating or hanging in the game against North Carolina State with Keyshawn dropping 31 points and whatever the case may be. Same with Kentucky, the drill. Now, defensively though, there's obviously defensively it's not ideal. I think that's fair to say. Trey Townsend is not an ideal defensive player, but that is also okay. It's something that Arizona is going to have to work around. But like we always talk about, you're going to get some players that are going to be flawed in the transfer portal. And, that's just the way it is. You're not going to be able to get Dalton Connects or players like that generally. Tennessee did. So I get it. We're going to talk about a Tennessee player in a second. But Townsend, I think, is going to be a very, very good fit for the U of A, and I think he's going to make Arizona fans very happy. And I also think that he's going to shoot a couple shots per game, where he's going to, not only is he going to be able to shoot a couple shots per game from 3, I think he's going to show that he can make them. And again, I am okay with players shooting 3s. There is this misconception out there about this, and they're wrong. I am okay with that. But again, I am not taking the player that is half the player of another player because he'll make 1 more 3 per game. That is not how my mindset works. I'm all right with Trey Townsend shooting a couple 3s per game. No problem with it. I also wanted Trey Townsend over Xavier Amos because guess what? Trey Townsend is a better basketball player than Xavier Amos, and that is why I want Trey Townsend. So I think, like I said, I think he's going to fit. You also have to give, Tommy Lloyd a lot of credit because this was the player that they prioritized very, very early in the process and went ahead and got. And that is, like I said, Tommy Lloyd's been beat up for his recruiting. And he's shown that, he knows what he's doing. Domestically, he knows what he's doing. He's getting really good players, and he's getting surprise players at that, and he's getting the transfers that he wanted. Again, I know that you struck out on Nembhard, but guess what? You ended up with Jaden Bradley, and you ended up with Caleb Love. So he has certainly shown that he knows what he is doing on that front, and I think he certainly – there shouldn't be a benefit of the doubt, but if you're one of those people, you probably deserves the benefit of the doubt. Now, with one thing that doesn't get the benefit of the doubt because there is no doubt is FanDuel. Check it out. FanDuel.com/locked-on, my friends. FanDuel, this is where it's at. Everybody likes betting on games. Who doesn't like betting on games? But guess what makes it even more enticing? When you are betting on games where you got a little bit of skin in the game. Now, with baseball, I have no interest in baseball. None, less than zero. But all of a sudden, I am in on baseball if if I'm betting on something that might occur or my money's in there, because guess what? I worked hard for my money, just like you did. That's why it's more enjoyable. Check it out. FanDuel.com/locked-on. This is where it's at. You can bet before games, during games, prop bets. You can bet futures, all kinds of stuff. Check it out. FanDuel.com/locked-on. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, let's talk a little bit more of Arizona basketball. So, you've obviously got Trey Townsend in the mix now. Now let's talk about Tobe Awaka. Tobe Awaka, big fan of Tobe Awaka. He's a player that I think can be that small ball, power or center. He can play power forward. I get, like we talked about the other day, I get that the per 40 stats, I do not like the per 40 stats unless they suit my needs. But joking aside, this kid's an awesome rebounder. He can, I think if he plays 15 to 20 minutes per game, I think that he can probably get you 7-8 rebounds. That's where it's at. And I think that he would be your backup big that would get all of those backup minutes. And I'm okay with that. Like I said, I would love to be able to sit here and say that, my bad Henry, or start the my bad Henry Vasar movement. But I will say that, I don't necessarily see it with Henry, but Tobe Awaka is he's the dude who is, I think, really, really good. And I would love to be able to see him get those minutes. And I think you can sell him on those minutes. You get 20 plus because you're the backup for both big men. And you could also say that, and listen, man, next year, one of those starting positions is totally yours. So you can really kind of get in on that and you're going to be good to go. So overall today, though, just wanted to talk about what KJ Lewis declaring means for the U of A. Obviously, I don't love it. I understand it. You got to do it. He's likely back. But again, all of these situations, as we talk about, are very, very fluid. And then Caleb Love, and Joson Sanon likely will not be on the same team. You obviously prioritize Caleb Love because you know that he is an All-American. Joson Sanon probably has a higher upside, but I don't know that I am going to get that in college. Because he's not going to be here as long. Then Trey Townsend, I think his passing is very, very underrated, and I think that's going to be a big part of what Arizona does with him. And Tobe Awaka. I think that there's a lot of room for Tobe Awaka. You can still play 20 minutes per game, and I think you can be a starter. But I also get that there's going to be a lot of players or a lot of teams in on him because he is good. That's what happens, though. If you're a good basketball player, you get teams that want you because you are good. So that's where it's at. Now, we got Arizona football. We got the spring game coming up. It's not really a spring game. I get it. Arizona's kind of banged up and all of that. So it's going to be more of kind of some plays, some glorified scrimmages, this and that. But so that's where it's at. But as always, very, very, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. We will be back with you tomorrow. Bear down, back the A, and thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day.